Good evening, dear listener. You're tuned into Binghamton Review Live. This is our second semester of the show. Glad to be back. My name is Patrick. I am the editor-in-chief of Binghamton Review and the engineer. With me I have Matt and Jordan.
Hey guys, welcome back.
Yeah, what's up, guys?
We're happy to be back for another semester, so maybe sort of introduction of what we do here. We take a look at some current events, maybe some political or philosophical topics from a more conservative libertarian standpoint, but more importantly we want to sort of just flesh out the truth behind ideas, maybe see through a lot of what other people may not see through, and maybe sort of ask the questions that other people may not be asking. So we will get right into it.
Yeah, so for those people who didn't tune in last semester, all three of us are pretty much libertarian leaning, but I'm more conservative and Jordan's more left leaning, so we disagree a lot. And each of us usually pick a topic each week, and then we just flush out the different arguments for both sides.
Mm-hmm. Right. That the balance between right and left sort of gets it provides a little bit more than you may think of like a standard echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
So we won't exactly try to tell you what to think. We'll maybe just ask maybe some of the questions that you may not have thought of before, and then you can ask yourself and say, hey, maybe I didn't think of it that way. So I don't know if you guys want to get right into it.
I'm ready.
Yeah, might as well.
All right, cool. So our first topic, we'll start with Matt and the developing drama in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so I think it only made sense to start off with the Brett Kavanaugh nomination to the Supreme Court. That was Donald Trump's pick to replace Anthony Kennedy. This has been the most relevant and one of the most important pieces of news for the past 3 weeks, so it's good to finally be able to talk about it. I think we should mainly focus on the sexual harassment or rape allegations. The other things were more minor. There were a bunch of disruptions during the hearings, and there was a bunch of people accusing him of being a white supremacist, all proven false. But the rape allegations and the sexual harassment allegations are the thing that's catching up to him now. So Christine Ford came out with, she sent a letter to Senator Dianne Feinstein in July that said that Brett Kavanaugh had sexually abused her at a party in 1982. So Brett Kavanaugh was 17, Ford was 15. She said to keep her name out of it, keep it anonymous. And now that it looks like Kavanaugh was going to get approved to the Supreme Court, confirmed, now Feinstein came out with a letter and basically told everybody that that Ford was the woman who accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexual harassment. But the problem is there is no date of the accusation. There's no place. There's no people who she said were there with her. Basically just Kavanaugh and Kavanaugh's one friend. And there's no evidence. There's no corroboration of the event. So we'll probably get more into the other accusations afterwards. I think we should start with the main one, the main reason that this is all come about first, which is Christine Ford accusing him with very little evidence. Jordan, what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This story, I'll admit it's sort of a lower level priority for me, but it still matters because you want to know that the people that are elected to represent you, or at least represent either side, no matter who it is, you want them to you want to make sure that they're not bad people or sadistic people, or that they have these shady pasts that can predict how they'll behave or enact legislation in the future. So the short answer is that I have no opinion one way or the other. I'm pretty neutral on this. I'm more, if there's more evidence that comes out against Kavanaugh, I'll consider formulating a more coherent opinion. But I haven't really seen a lot of evidence either way, so I can't really make up my mind as to, for instance, if I believe he did something or didn't do something. I just don't think that I personally have enough information. But the thing that I would say is that I would caution my former party, aka the Democrats, to, be careful what you wish for, because this could just as easily be a game that is played against you if a Democratic administration comes into power and they try to get a more liberal or more democratic justice appointed to the Supreme Court. So this could be very easily turned around on them, and I think it just sets a really dangerous and unnecessary precedent that every time you try to appoint a judge that you disagree with, and somebody disagrees with that, we're just going to accuse them of doing something awful in their past, and maybe that will destroy their reputation enough so they don't get the nomination, or they don't get the appointment. So that's that's the long and the short of it on my end.
Yeah, I think this is extremely relevant for similar reasons to you, but mostly for like the way we think of criminal justice in the United States. So I'm just going to throw it out there that I have no idea if this happened or not. Nobody has any idea if this happened or not. So I'm not going to sit here and say I believe Kavanaugh or I believe Ford. Like, that would just be a waste of time. We can't really say that. This was 36 years ago, and there's literally no evidence. She didn't tell anybody about it afterwards. The first person she told was her therapist 25 years later. And the therapist notes, don't say Kavanaugh's name, and contradicts what Ford actually told as her story. So again, it'd be a mistake to ruin somebody's life or ruin somebody's career over something you can't prove, because there's been a lot of false accusations recently. Ones that we can basically say that there's evidence that they're false. So, what really concerns me, what really makes this relevant is, the Democrats' response, such as, Chuck Schumer and, Kristen, Gillibrand. Both of them have come out and said, we're not playing this as innocent innocent until proven guilty. Chuck Schumer said, we're just going to act as the fact gatherers, but innocent until proven guilty and guilty until proven innocent is not a thing with us, which really makes no sense to me. I mean, we live in America where you're innocent until proven guilty, and then Gillibrand said the same exact thing, except more politically aimed, where she said, with all the Republicans saying innocent till proven guilty, that's just a little tactic for them to confuse the voters, which I have no idea what she's talking about. I mean, that's just a basic part of American law, innocent till proven guilty. And right now, this is something that happened 36 years ago with no corroborating evidence, no witnesses have ever said that any of this happened. So I think that the dangerous precedent is the accusation of ruining somebody's life. I mean, if the public took this and believed Ford, not that that's what's actually happening in reality, but if the public took this and believed Ford, this could ruin Kavanaugh's chance of getting on the Supreme Court, and it could take away his appeals court seat too, which I think is completely immoral to do.
I think maybe let me pose this to you. I definitely am more in this camp personally. But let me ask you guys what you think of this. Now, in instances of like this, with the rise of the Me Too movement, things like this, a lot of accusations coming out, some true and helping to, dethrone, in a sense, bad people, but also some that are against innocent people. Right. I sort of just thought of this right now. It's like an accusatory trolley problem type of thing. Like, if you do sort of what the Me Too, before the Me Too movement was doing, like, not really taking into account, testimony, and maybe not digging a little bit deeper, you let a lot of people go free that, shouldn't, and a lot more people get hurt. But at the same time, if you redirect the trolley, if you look more closely at those accusations, the possibility of an innocent person getting hurt does... some people may argue saves a lot more, a lot more people's lives in the future. Maybe just I don't know if that's a rough analogy, or maybe.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Again, I innocent till proven guilty. I don't think it's right to put in jail or ruin innocent people's lives just for the fact of we possibly let a couple people go who actually were guilty. I know that's terrible, but I mean. Here's the problem, is that this was 36 years ago. And what we really should be doing is encouraging people, men and women who have had situations like this, to come out at the time. I know that's hard. I know there's a bunch of reasons why it doesn't happen. I understand all of those reasons, but the problem is if you wait 36, even if you wait like 5 years later, 10 years later, it's impossible to prove that this happened, which means it's impossible for anyone to do anything about it. So part of it's changing the way people think about it, so that people coming out isn't like a shameful thing. Again, I know that's hard to do. That's a lot easier said than done, but that's one of the solutions we have to get to, because what's happening is situations like this are really ruining the Me Too movement, which I think is harmful for the country. It's harmful for women and obviously men too, but just statistics show that it's more women than men who go through stuff like this. And part of it's because it became political, is where the Me Too movement is kind of like losing a lot of traction, where just today or yesterday, Michael Avenatti, the lawyer of Stormy Daniels, came out with a third woman to accuse Brett Kavanaugh. The second one nobody really talked about. It wasn't really anything substantial, but a third woman, which Michael Avenatti's been fighting against the president for months. Honestly, you could even say years, but let's go with months. And this woman came out and said that Brett Kavanaugh was a part of a rape gang at parties, or something like that. I mean, yeah, and gang rape. So she would always go to the same party, and every party that there was there, Brett Kavanaugh, his friend Mark Judge, and a bunch of other guys would just spike the punch or get girls super drunk, which is awful, obviously, if this is true, but we can't take the accusation true until there's evidence. There's no witness who have corroborated this, but bring them to the side and, but the problem is that Michael Avenatti, like the woman went to Michael Avenatti, or Michael Avenatti went to her, or something like that, which makes this look really political. And Feinstein coming out a couple days before the vote was going to be, is extremely political, which means people are going to take this less seriously, even in situations where it should be taken seriously.
It's a good way to look at it. Jordan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Matt pretty much said everything that I was going to say. I just don't think that there's been enough information, at least not released to the public, in order to make informed decisions. Because when you're talking about these cases, and really in all aspects of politics, you have to go with where the data and where the evidence takes you. And without data or evidence, I can't really accuse or acquit Brett Kavanaugh in either way, because I just don't have enough information, and I haven't done sort of a deep enough dive into this specific issue to make a fair opinion or judgment. So I pretty much agree with what Matt is saying, that people are just going to overly politicize this, just like they always do, and it's a big mess. And it just comes down to, I don't think that anybody, regardless of if you're a Democrat or Republican, Independent, whatever, I think that you should withhold judgment until we have more information.
All right, sweet. All right, why don't we move on to Jordan's topic?
Yes. So, this is from the New York Times. The headline is, UK's Labour Party lurches sharply left on economy. And rather than reading the whole article, because it's pretty long, I will summarize it for our lovely listeners. So what this article is talking about, is the fact that Jeremy Corbyn, who was basically elected to be the Labour Party leader, which is one of the two major political parties in the UK. So there's Labour, and then there's the Conservatives, also known as the Tories, who have been in power for a long time. And Jeremy Corbyn wasn't expected to win at all, and he did. And so his agenda, it says here, is the furthest left that the Labor Party has espoused in a long time, since about the 80s. And it's pretty interesting because he basically, one of his policies is to force corporations to provide more stocks, so more investors and more workers could have more stakes in the company. So that would give them more control and tip the balance. It says here, tip the balance in favor of balance of power in favor of the workers. So I have a lot of mixed feelings on this, because on the one hand, I don't really like the idea of forcing, like using the government to force people to do something, even though I am largely against capitalism and against corporations. I still don't think that it's right for the state to force the corporations or the CEOs to do something against their will, as long as it does, like if it's not like directly affecting or hurting the workers. If like there's like child labor or something like that that's going on, then okay, yes, government can step in and say, all right, you guys need to stop. But and it also mentions that Corbyn wants to nationalize some industries like transportation and let's see, I think infrastructure as well. And that is, it's interesting because the thing that people have to understand about labor is that, the Labor Party, is that over the years, as I alluded to earlier, it's become, it started out basically as a socialist party, which, I somewhat support, but in recent years, they've become a lot more just milquetoast and a lot more moderate. And what Corbyn wants to do is drag them back to the left. And I don't really see a problem with that. But on the other hand, I don't really agree with some of Corbyn's tactics. So I guess you could say I agree with his ends, but I'm not necessarily sure I agree with his means, which is my same problem with people like Karl Marx and people like that, is I agree with their ends, but not really their means, because, again, I'm against the state on principle, because I am essentially an anarchist, and for those that don't know, that doesn't mean that I want everybody to, just have, I don't want to have, like, a totally lawless society with no rules and everybody just getting to hurt each other and do awful things to each other. And that's not what I'm talking about when I say I'm an anarchist.
We'll definitely have to get into that.
Yeah.
Different show.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll different topic for a different day. But I just want to very quickly state that so like I said, Corbyn is basically dragging them back a little bit more leftward. And the thing with labor is that it's not even really all that much of an equivalent of like the Democratic Party, because a lot of the Democrats, and maybe you guys will disagree with me on this, but it is true if you look at the voting record. A lot of them, they would be right at home in the Tory Party, because the spectrum in the UK, like the spectrum that we think makes sense, like there are people that perceive Bernie Sanders as being far left, but if you put him in somewhere like the UK or Denmark or Sweden, he'd be pretty moderate. And the political spectrum in the UK is significantly to the left of where we are in America, to where our spectrum is at in America. So maybe some of our Democrats, like if they were in the UK, would be in Labour, but mostly they would pretty much be in the Conservatives. There's also the Liberal Democrats, which are more of a center-left kind of thing. But, I just thought it was an interesting topic because we don't really cover a lot of international politics on this show. We didn't really do that a lot last year, so I thought it would just be nice for a change. Anyway, Matt?
For sure.
Yeah, so one thing is you're right that a lot of other countries have different political spectrums. Bernie Sanders would be a moderate in a lot of places. And I'm actually really excited for whatever show that is, because last semester we had that debate between our different political ideologies, and I thought that was one of the best episodes we had last semester. So
yes.
Keep tuning in, and you'll find out. That was actually a really good show for us. But so about the article, obviously from my perspective, I completely disagree with all of this, like every single piece of it, because I believe in the free market. I am a very conservative capitalist when it comes to the economy. So when the article talks about nationalizing a bunch of products like energy, that kind of scares me. That's
what I meant. I said infrastructure. I meant energy. Sorry, Matt, continue. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and it's like you lose me when you talk about forcing businesses to do anything. It's just,
forcing businesses to.
Well, I don't even care what the end of that sentence is. Let me stop you there. This is not very favorable to my economic ideas. It kind of makes sense why a lot of places are becoming more far right and more far left. But the end story is economies work best where supply equals demand. They're talking about the balance of power between businesses and workers, but the point is that there's a supply and a demand for businesses, for products, for basically everything. For money, there's a supply and demand for money, which gives you prices, which gives you wages. And I'm a huge believer in that businesses and workers will do things where up until the marginal cost equals the marginal benefit, which is just a fancy way of saying they'll do something if it benefits them and don't do it if it costs them. And when everybody in an economy does that, that's when innovation happens, that's when best products happen, that's when wages will end up rising and to an equilibrium point where both sides are happy, where prices are going to be where both sides are happy, and you get prices where they're too high for people, or products that are poor quality when the government comes in and controls prices or makes people do certain things, make businesses do certain things. That just throws the whole equilibrium of everything you learn in Econ 101 out of whack, and you get false prices, false wages, and everything just is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're itching to jump in there. George.
Yeah. I was just interested in the whole because generally you are taught that in a capitalist system, the incentive structure makes it so people create the highest quality good at the cheapest cost. But while that's true in some cases, in other cases there's this practice called planned obsolescence, which is where you make a product that's so crappy and so subpar that it's designed to break easily, so the consumer will then be forced to go out and spend more money on either a replacement product or an upgraded version of that same product. So that's where I have a skepticism, a dose of skepticism when people make that argument of, oh, it produces the highest quality goods at the cheapest cost. Sometimes, but you also have to factor in the times where manufacturers do intentionally make their products to be absolute garbage, so you'll be incentivized to buy another one.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I think Westerns... yeah, I know, right? See, this is why the debate episode that we had last semester was good. Like, we actually super hardcore disagreed with each other. But I think Western civilization is a very good example of how we get the best possible goods in capitalist society. People will pay more money for higher quality goods, and everything basically comes down to voluntary transactions, which we're getting like super libertarian now. But it's like a lot of people talk about that with the iPhone. That's like the huge example of what you were talking about, where iPhones will basically make their iPhone. I don't know if they're like making it like specifically like let's like make this wire erode more, so that I don't know, but. They basically, like, time out after 2 years, which is basically when you're supposed to end up getting a new phone. Mm-hmm. But people don't really care about that. Like, we're still getting higher quality phones than we would have if the government stepped in and forced Apple to do certain things.
Well, you would care if you didn't have a lot of money to spend on extra phones. You if you didn't have a lot of extra money to spend on phones, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but it's working. Apple's gaining money. They're profiting from this because people will buy the phone, they'll use it for the 2 years, and then they'll buy another one.
Right, but there's this real quick. There's this story that I saw on forget where it was, but there was a light bulb that's been in a firehouse in somewhere in America. Can't remember where it was, that has never gone out, and it's been there for over 100 years, and that's because it was so high quality that it didn't need to be replaced. And so what happened is, for instance, in the light bulb industry, the heads of the light bulb companies got together and they said, we're not making any money off our light bulbs because nobody's buying them, because nobody's buying more of them because they last for so long that we're not making enough money. So what they decided to do is the practice again of planned obsolescence, where they specifically designed their light bulbs to be subpar quality, so that would incentivize customers to go out and buy more of the light bulbs, so it would increase the profits of those light bulb companies.
I don't think that's a bad thing. Most of the time when people who have like one good idea or make one really good invention usually come up with more than one. It's not somebody who's just like, oh, no way, here's a light bulb and then nothing else. You see that through history, is that people who you're like, this is a brilliant inventor, look how many things they invented. It's usually a lot. So, if like your first invention is a light bulb and you make one that you can't profit off of, then that's no good. But if you make a light bulb that you can profit off of and that improves, which the quality of a light bulb has improved vastly throughout time since the first light bulb. I mean, Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb; he just made it good. Right. So I don't know. This is the same thing to me. It's like the equivalent. It's not exactly equivalent, but it's just like pizza. It's like people shouldn't make pizza because it only lasts for an hour and then it's gone, and then they have to buy more. Or like people shouldn't put salt in popcorn or in drinks because then it makes you thirsty and then buy another drink. Like these are just good business ideas.
Right.
I don't know. So
that is kind of a false equivalency, but we'll have to agree to disagree.
It's not a false equivalency. It's just businesses will do what makes them the most profitable, and then consumers will do what makes them the happiest. And then where that meets is where we get all of our prices, our wages, our quality of goods, and there's voluntary transaction between all of it. Like people end up happy with it, and so do the producers.
I'd like to add in at the very end there is political science research that notices that nationalized resources, especially oil, do lead to greater levels of human rights repression. More so in like developing countries, but I imagine the parallel's the same because you no longer rely on the people for your revenue, and so therefore you can keep them down. But we are out of time for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Binghamton Review Live. We will be back again next week, 6 to 6:30 p.m. Have a lovely evening, folks, and we will see you next week.